Welcome to the Queen's Lair, a lifestyle podcast. Get inspired by our latest tips and information about small business, entrepreneurship, natural hair, travel, food, and even relationships. Stay tuned for another great episode. I am your host, Renee Patrice. How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to my podcast. It is June 19th, 2020, otherwise known as Juneteenth. I want to read a little bit of what I posted on my Instagram today about Juneteenth, because I think a lot of people just don't know a lot about it. So I'm going to read a little bit about it, and then I'll go into the rest of my podcast. Okay, so this is coming from history.com. Juneteenth, short for June 19th, marks the day when federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas in 1865 to take control of the state and ensure that all enslaved people be freed. The troops' arrival came a full 2.5 years after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. Juneteenth honors the end of slavery in the United States and is considered the longest-running African-American holiday. Confederate General Robert E. Lee had surrendered 2 months earlier in Virginia. I think it's Appomattox Courthouse, but slavery had remained relatively unaffected in Texas until U.S. General Gordon Granger stood on Texas soil and read General Orders No. 3. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. So, in a nutshell, the Emancipation Proclamation happened, but people did not know until almost 2.5 years later that they were actually free, and they had been free for 2.5 years and they didn't even know. So that left a lot of people, the slaves, who did not understand what was going on. It left them in a state of disarray, These were people, a lot who were citizens because they were born in this country. When these folks were brought here, people say, well, the slaves were brought here. Slaves were not brought here. People were brought here and were pushed into slavery. Let's just get that straight. In that, a lot of people had their children here, so now they have American-born children. And it left them in a state of disarray because they had nothing, and they had to build a community from where do you even begin? A lot of the folks who ended up being freed ended up staying on a lot of these plantations. A lot of masters and, some of them would leave the plantations and abandon them because they had no way of making money anymore. Nobody was tilling their land anymore. Some did stay to till the land anyway and work regardless because they had nothing else, When you're taken from your homeland and the only place that you know, there's no real sense of community because you've been plucked out of everything that you know. So this was a pretty devastating thing for them to now be free, and still it was as if nothing had changed. So that's a very disturbing fact. I think a lot of people forget that piece. I know that a lot of Black Americans, I have a dual view of this because, meanwhile, my ancestry, of course, is African. My heritage is Jamaican because both of my parents are Jamaican and came here as immigrants. Also became naturalized citizens. But, my siblings and I are American born. So I kind of see it from both views. I see it from my parents' view, and I also see it from the Black American view. And I understand that we have a lot of distrust amongst each other. I mean, when you want to divide a people, this is what you do. You had people who worked in the field, and then you had people who worked in the master's house. That's a great way to divide people. It even caused a lot of colorism. You have the more lighter hued folks who were in quote unquote masses house, and then you had the darker skinned people who were serving and in the field. And it has carried over to this day. I mean, we're in 2020 and we're still very much knee deep in colorism, racism, classism. It's really it's incredible that we're still carrying this. And this is all throughout different countries all over the world, but especially in the Caribbean, that has definitely been a colorism issue, and it's quite serious, actually. But we can't allow these things to divide us. Right now, we need to be together more than ever. Right now, we need to make sure that we are lifting each other up every chance that we get. This is not the time to split hairs on what country you're from or where you grew up. We are the African diaspora. And I touched on this briefly in my podcast right before this one, talking about the African diaspora and making sure that we are supporting each other and making sure that we are taking care of each other just as human beings. When did we stop caring for each other as humans? It's been a whole lot of segregation amongst our own people, which has just been very hard to navigate. But one of the things that I think that, and I don't want to say it's a positive thing, but one of the positive things, if I can say it that way, that has come out of all this division is that it's bringing to light and bringing to the surface everything that has been a powder keg all this time. And maybe we needed to have the administration that we do to be able to bring that forward. We saw touches of it when Obama was in office for the 2 terms that he was, where people were not happy. A lot of it just because he stood on a few issues that people didn't agree with. He was a black man and he was intelligent, and he definitely brought a different agenda to the table, and people were just mad at that, that he was intelligent and knew what he was talking about and cared. He really had a heart for the people. And now we're seeing pretty much the complete opposite of that, and it's very hard to take. But like I said, I always say this all the time, voting is your power. Don't waste your power. Your local elections are even more important than your presidential election, because those are the people that affect the change that is in your area where you live, eat, breathe every day. So I'm hoping the folks that got out to their primaries, that they got out to their primaries, and anyone that may have any primaries coming up, definitely make sure that you exercise your right to vote. And also coming, this November, we'll see what happens. There was a lot of upsets during the primaries that have taken place thus far. And which I hope there'll be that same sort of upset in November. One can hope, one can dream. But yeah, listen to my podcast, the one right before this one, talking about unity within the African diaspora, because this is definitely going to speak to that. But being that today is Juneteenth, I know a lot of people aren't really familiar with Juneteenth, so I wanted to kind of open up the podcast with that and just, have some words about it. But like I said, we can no longer look at situations and make that keep us down. We have to somehow come together and form a true community, not just say, oh, we're part of the black community or whatever. Listen, the African diaspora stretches way past the Black community. We're talking about our brown communities as well, our other Caribbean brothers and sisters, our Dominicans, our Puerto Ricans, all of our folks that we're all connected. We're all connected at the roots. And we need to really lean on each other right now. Now is the time. Now is definitely the time. So I just wanted to check in and just say happy Juneteenth to everyone. Please, please, please amplify Black voices, amplify Black businesses. Go spend your coin with them. And I could say that to brown businesses as well. And, shout out your people because we need it. African diaspora survival depends on it. So let's keep that positivity going. And, if you want to keep the conversation going, you know what you can do. You can contact me on Instagram and all my social medias at Onyx Queen Media. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. I'll be back again later on this weekend. Bye.